The metallic click of the Barrett .50 caliber echoed across the Afghan valley. Staff Sergeant Marcus Hayes pressed himself against frozen earth, breath fogging in the pre-dawn darkness. December 15th, 2010, Helmand Province, temperature 38 degrees and dropping. His convoy, 6 Humvees, 30 Marines, had rolled into the valley at 0530. Now, 15 minutes later, they were dying. The first RPG hit the lead vehicle with a sound like God's own hammer. The explosion painted the darkness orange and red. Metal screamed. Men screamed louder. Hayes scrambled behind the burning wreckage, M4 carbine tight against his shoulder. Rounds cracked overhead, that distinctive supersonic snap that meant someone was trying to kill you. Radio traffic dissolved into chaos. Voices overlapping, shouting coordinates, calling for medevac, for air support, for anything. Contact! Contact! 3 o'clock high! Hayes looked up. 3 elevated positions on the ridgeline, maybe 1,800 meters out. Muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness like evil stars. Taliban fighters with the high ground, plunging fire, perfect kill zone. This was an ambush, professional, planned. They were all going to die here. Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled through the radio, tight with controlled panic. Air support unavailable. We're on our own. All units return fire and prepare to move. But there was nowhere to move. The kill zone was perfect. Whoever planned this knew exactly what they were doing. Hayes thought about his wife. 8 months pregnant, due in April. He'd promised her he'd come home, promised he'd meet their daughter. Then the first hostile position went silent. Not slowly, not gradually. One moment, sustained automatic weapons fire. The next moment, nothing. Hayes barely registered it, too busy trying not to die. But then the second position stopped firing. Then the third. 7 shots, 7 kills, 90 seconds. The valley fell silent except for the crackling of burning vehicles and the groans of wounded Marines. Lieutenant Morrison's voice came through the radio, quiet now, almost reverent. Phantom. Hayes never saw the shooter, never knew the name, just heard that single word over the radio and understood that someone, somewhere, had been watching over them. A guardian angel with a rifle in the patience of stone. He survived that morning. They all did. 30 Marines who should have died in an Afghan valley lived to go home to their families. Hayes never forgot, and he spent the next 14 years carrying a photograph, zoomed in on that distant ridgeline, trying to see the face of the person who saved his life. 14 years later, the face he'd been searching for was serving him coffee. Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California, present day, 2024. The morning sun painted the Pacific Ocean gold and crimson, but inside the cafeteria, the light was fluorescent and cold. Sarah Elizabeth Thorne arrived at 0630, exactly as she had every morning for 2 years. 44 years old, average height, slender build, brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Nothing remarkable, nothing memorable, just another face in the background of military life. She unlocked the cafeteria doors with practiced efficiency, turned on the lights, started the industrial coffee machines, 3 of them, each capable of brewing 80 cups. The smell of coffee filled the air, bitter and dark. Her movements were precise, economical, nothing wasted. She stocked the serving line with military exactness, napkin dispensers exactly 2 inches apart, condiment stations arranged by frequency of use, coffee cups stacked in perfect rows. Most people would call it obsessive, compulsive. Sarah called it survival, because precision kept you alive, patterns kept you invisible, and being invisible kept you safe. She moved through the empty cafeteria with unconscious awareness, never turning her back to the main entrance. Her eyes tracked movement through the windows. Early morning runners on the beach, instructors heading to the range, recruits stumbling toward morning PT. She cataloged threats automatically: exits, cover, sightlines, all the calculations that happened behind her eyes without conscious thought, the way some people breathed. On the wall near the kitchen entrance, a memorial photograph hung in a simple frame. FOB Delhi Memorial, 2010 to 2011. 30 Marines in desert camouflage, standing in formation. Sergeant Marcus Hayes, prominent in the front row. Younger then, harder. Sarah walked past that photograph every single day. Nobody ever noticed that if you looked very carefully at the background, at the distant ridgeline barely visible in the upper left corner, you could see a tiny figure. Small, compact, weapon in hand. Nobody ever looked that carefully. At 07:15, Master Chief Victor Blackwood pushed through the cafeteria doors. 52 years old, 6 feet tall, shoulders like a linebacker, face like weathered granite. He walked with a slight limp, left leg, old injury, probably shrapnel. Sarah noticed everything. Blackwood poured himself coffee from the station she just finished setting up. Black, no sugar, no cream. He stood there for a moment, steam rising from the cup, and looked directly at her. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, curiosity, calculation. He'd been watching her for weeks now. Sarah knew it. Felt his attention like a physical weight. He'd been a SEAL. Team 3, if she had to guess. Desert Storm era, early Iraq deployments. The way he moved, the way he scanned rooms, the way his right hand unconsciously checked his hip where a sidearm would rest. All of it screamed special operations. And he was starting to suspect she wasn't what she appeared to be. Sarah turned away first, went back to her prep work, slicing fruit for the morning buffet, each piece exactly the same size, blade moving with metronomic rhythm. She didn't look up when Blackwood left, but she knew the moment he was gone. Felt the absence of his attention. At 07:45 they arrived. 5 SEAL recruits, fresh from Hell Week, still riding the high of survival. Young, loud, invincible in the way only people who've never truly faced death can be. Garrett Blake led the pack. 24 years old, Phoenix, Arizona. Blonde hair cut high and tight. Blue eyes that held too much anger and not enough wisdom. His father had been a Navy pilot, killed in Iraq back in 2006. The kid wore his father's loss like armor, but Sarah could see through it to the wounded child underneath. Holden Merrick followed, 26, Amarillo, Texas. Sniper wannabe with decent scores but poor discipline. Tended to overcorrect for wind, rushed his breathing. 82% qualification rate, good enough for most purposes, not good enough for what he wanted to be. Bryce Caldwell brought up the rear, 25, Jacksonville, Florida, social climber, followed Garrett's lead without question, 75% qual rate, inconsistent trigger discipline, would probably wash out before advanced training. Sarah knew them all, had studied them the way she'd once studied targets, learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their fears. She knew Garrett ordered extra protein at every meal because he was desperately trying to bulk up, convinced he was too small. Knew Holden nursed a shoulder injury he was hiding from the instructors. Knew Bryce was sleeping poorly, probably nightmares from Hell Week, probably questioning whether he belonged here. She knew all of this because information was survival, because understanding the people around you meant staying 3 steps ahead of danger. The recruits loaded their trays at the serving line, joking, shoving each other with the easy physicality of young men testing their strength. Sarah moved through her routine, refilling coffee, wiping down surfaces, invisible, until she wasn't. Garrett balanced his tray one-handed, gesturing wildly as he told some story about Hell Week surf torture. His hand clipped the edge of Sarah's stainless steel tray. Coffee cups, creamer containers, sugar packets, all of it crashed to the floor in a cacophony of breaking ceramic and spilling liquid. The cafeteria went silent. Garrett looked down at the spreading pool of coffee, then at Sarah kneeling to clean it up. His grin was wide and unapologetic. "Oops, sorry about that, ma'am. Hand slipped." Behind him, Holden burst into laughter. Bro, careful. She might break a nail cleaning that up. Their table, all 5 recruits, erupted in laughter. Other diners looked down at their plates, uncomfortable silence rippling outward from the neighboring tables. Sarah knelt, cleaning cloth in hand. She worked in systematic patterns, outside to inside. Not a drop missed. Her shoulders didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. Her face remained perfectly neutral. But something shifted behind her eyes. Something cold and old and patient. She stood, tray in hand, and looked at each of them for exactly 1 second. Garrett, Holden, Bryce. Then the other 2 whose names she'd also cataloged. Her expression gave away nothing. Then she turned and walked away. From his corner booth, Master Chief Blackwood watched the entire exchange. He noticed the way Sarah's weight had redistributed when Garrett spoke. Subtle shift, combat stance bleeding through civilian posture. Notice the way her eyes had tracked all 5 recruits simultaneously. Threat assessment automatic and instant. Notice the way she'd controlled her breathing. Deliberate, measured. That wasn't the reaction of a cafeteria worker embarrassed by a clumsy accident. That was the reaction of someone used to violence, choosing not to employ it. Blackwood pulled out his phone and typed a message to Lieutenant Rebecca Hart, Base Intelligence Specialist. Need to talk. My office, 1700 hours. Because something about Sarah Thorne didn't add up. And Blackwood had survived 30 years in special operations by trusting his instincts when things didn't add up. The conversation at the recruits' table continued, volume increasing now that Sarah was gone. You know what I heard? Holden leaned forward, voice carrying across the cafeteria. They're talking about letting women into SEAL training, equal opportunity and all that noise. Garrett nearly choked on his eggs. What? No way, that's ridiculous. Dead serious, bro. Holden tapped his fingers on the table in nervous rhythm. Some Pentagon initiative. Bryce shook his head emphatically. Women can't be SEALs. Physically impossible. Hell Week alone would destroy them. Facts. Garrett glanced toward the kitchen where Sarah had disappeared. I mean, no offense to the ladies, but it's just biology. They're built different. Not better or worse, just different. Holden nodded. Combat doesn't care about your feelings. Either you can carry a wounded teammate through enemy fire, or you can't. And let's be real, when things go sideways, you want a warrior next to you, not someone who's there because of some political quota. The words carried through the cafeteria. Some diners nodded agreement. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. That was military culture. Don't rock the boat. Don't challenge the prevailing opinion, especially not as a junior enlisted. In the kitchen, Sarah continued her work, slicing fruit, refilling supplies. Her hands never trembled. Her face never changed expression, but she heard every word. She'd heard variations of those words for 20 years, first in training, then in combat, then in the long, slow years of hiding afterward. The words didn't hurt anymore. They were just noise, background static, the sound of ignorance speaking with the confidence of inexperience. What bothered her was the waste. All that potential, Garrett's drive, Holden's natural eye for distance, even Bryce's desperate desire to belong. All of it twisted by arrogance and assumption. They could be excellent warriors, but they'd never get there while they were busy judging others by gender instead of capability. Not her problem, not anymore. She'd done her time, fought her wars, buried her dead. Now she just wanted to serve coffee and be left alone. But the universe had other plans. At 0900 hours, Sarah carried supplies to the equipment storage room behind the kitchen. The room was organized with precision that would make a supply sergeant weep with joy. Everything arranged by size, frequency of use, expiration date, items stored exactly 2 inches apart, inventory logs updated daily. The kind of organization that spoke of military training so deeply ingrained it became unconscious habit. She began restocking paper towels, counting automatically. 28, 29. 30. Hey lady, you got any protein bars? Sarah's fingers paused mid-motion. Her internal count didn't falter. 31. 32. Holden Merrick stood in the doorway, that same cocky grin on his face. Behind him, Garrett and Bryce blocked the exit. Sarah reached for another roll without looking at him. Cabinet by the south wall, second shelf. Holden didn't move. He looked around the storage room, taking in the military precision of the organization. That's pretty organized in here. You ex-military or something? The lie came easily. She'd used it dozens of times. My husband was? Garrett pushed into the room, making it smaller, more confined. Let me guess, he couldn't hack it? Sarah set down the roll she was holding, turned slowly, met his eyes directly. He was killed in Helmand Province, 2011. IED on a route clearance patrol. He was trying to save his team. The truth and the lie woven together. Let them make assumptions. Let them think she was just a widow riding her dead husband's coattails. Garrett's smirk faltered for half a second, then returned weaker. Sorry for your loss, but that doesn't really answer the question, does it? Where'd you learn to organize like this? Bryce laughed, the sound harsh in the confined space. Bro, leave her alone. She's probably just OCD or whatever. They left, laughing about something else, their attention already moving on. Sarah waited until their footsteps faded, then continued stalking. 33, 34, 35. Her hands didn't shake. They never did. An hour later, Sarah carried a supply requisition to the outdoor seating area where instructors took their breaks. The California sun was warm on her face. Ocean breeze carried the smell of salt and gunpowder from the nearby ranges. Captain Daniel Rodriguez sat at a picnic table, reviewing qualification scores on a tablet. 38 years old, range master, former Marine, if the tattoo on his forearm was any indication. Eagle, globe, and anchor partially visible under his sleeve. Corporal Danny Morgan, the base armorer, sat at an adjacent table field stripping an M4 carbine. Parts laid out in precise order on a cleaning mat. Upper receiver, lower receiver, bolt carrier group, charging handle, buffer spring assembly. Sarah set down the delivery slip. Ammunition requisition for next week's qualification, sir. Rodriguez glanced up, nodded. Thanks, Thorne. Leave it there. She turned to go. Wait. Morgan held up the bolt carrier group. Ma'am, you ever seen one of these before? The question wasn't hostile, just curious, maybe bored. The kind of small talk people made to fill silence. Sarah looked at the component. Her brain cataloged each piece automatically, saw the pattern, knew the sequence. Bolt carrier, bolt, firing pin, retaining pin, cam pin, extractor, ejector, gas rings. My husband showed me some things, she said carefully. The lie again, the shield. Morgan grinned. Yeah? Bet you can't name 3 parts, though. Behind her, she heard more footsteps. Of course, the recruits were back. The universe had a sense of humor. Sarah could feel the trap closing. She could walk away, should walk away, maintain the fiction, stay invisible. But something in Morgan's tone, not quite mockery but close, triggered something in her. Some old reflex, some spark of pride that even 14 years of hiding hadn't fully extinguished. Upper receiver, she said quietly, pointing. Bolt carrier group, charging handle, buffer spring assembly, gas tube, forward assist, ejection port cover, magazine release, trigger assembly, safety selector. She stopped herself, but the damage was done. Silence. Morgan stared at her. That's correct, all of it. How did you? Lucky guess. Sarah picked up her clipboard, started walking. Hold up. Garrett stepped into her path. That wasn't luck. That was knowledge. Holden appeared on her other side. Yeah, specific knowledge. My girlfriend can't name 3 parts, and her dad's a colonel. Bryce circled behind. So what's the deal? You some kind of gun nut? Spend your weekends at the range? Sarah's pulse remained steady. 62 beats per minute, same as always. YouTube, she said flatly. You can learn anything on YouTube these days. She moved past them. Didn't run. Didn't rush. Just walked with the same measured pace she always used. But Master Chief Blackwood was watching from 30 feet away. He saw the micro-expressions, the brief tightening around her eyes, the way her right hand had automatically moved toward her hip, where a sidearm would typically rest. The way she'd name those parts, not as someone who'd studied them, but as someone who'd field-stripped thousands of weapons in the dark, by touch alone, muscle memory so deep it was practically genetic. Interesting. Very interesting. Blackwood pulled out his phone, opened the personnel database, typed Sarah Thorne. The file was thin, too thin. Hired 2 years ago, clean background check, standard references, nothing remarkable. But at the bottom, a single notation that made his blood run cold. Security clearance level 3, DOD restriction applies. Cafeteria workers didn't need level 3 clearance. Blackwood picked up his phone, dialed an extension. Hart, this is Master Chief Blackwood. I need you to run a deep background check for me. Full workup, highest priority, and Hart, keep it quiet. That afternoon, Sarah delivered fresh towels to the outdoor equipment shed. The route took her past the pistol range, where Master Chief Blackwood was conducting qualification tests for a new SEAL class. 15 recruits, all male, ages 22 to 28. Sarah knew their names, their hometowns, their average scores. Information absorbed through weeks of overhearing conversations, reading clipboards left on tables, noticing which ones ordered extra protein, who was nursing injuries, who was on the verge of washing out. Garrett Blake, Phoenix, Arizona, 24, overconfident, average shooter, 78% qualification rate. Holden Merrick, Amarillo, Texas, 26, sniper aspirant, 82%, decent but not exceptional, tendency to overcorrect for wind. Bryce Caldwell, Jacksonville, Florida, 25, social climber, 75%, inconsistent trigger discipline. She knew them better than they knew themselves. Fleming, you're up. Blackwood's voice carried across the range. Blake, Caldwell, Merrick, you're on deck. Watch and learn. Sarah kept walking, head down, almost past the range. Hey, Miss Expert. She stopped, turned. Holden jogged over, that perpetual grin plastered across his face. Garrett and Bryce followed like pilot fish following a shark. Since you know so much about weapons, Holden said loudly enough for everyone to hear, maybe you can tell me what I'm doing wrong today. He pointed at his target downrange, 25 yards, standard M9 Beretta qualification. His grouping was spread across the 7 and 8 rings. Terrible. Embarrassing for someone who wanted to be a sniper. The recruits were watching now. 15 sets of eyes. This was entertainment, a break in the monotony of training. Sarah looked at the target. The grouping pattern showed clear indicators. Shots pulling low and left. Inconsistent vertical spread. No compensation for his natural breathing cycle. She could walk away. Should walk away. But Captain Rodriguez was there, watching. And Master Chief Blackwood had positioned himself deliberately, arms crossed, expression neutral, but eyes sharp. This was another test, another trap. Sarah looked at Holden's target again, saw the pattern as clearly as she saw the color of the sky. You're jerking the trigger, she said quietly, anticipating recoil, and your breathing is wrong. Holden's grin froze. What? You're holding your breath instead of firing on the natural pause between exhale and inhale, and you're tensing your forearm before the shot. That's pulling everything left. Captain Rodriguez walked over from the range booth. She's absolutely right, Merrick. That's exactly what you're doing. I've been trying to tell you for 2 weeks. Holden's face reddened. The other recruits snickered. Garrett stepped forward, aggressive now, embarrassed on his friend's behalf. Okay, Miss Expert, if you're so smart, why don't you show us how it's done? Sarah started to refuse, started to walk away. Then Bryce accidentally bumped into her bag, knocking it off her shoulder. Contents spilled across the gravel. Wallet, keys, protein bar, and a small photo in a protective, waterproof case. The photo showed a younger Sarah, maybe 32, in desert camouflage, standing next to a man in Marine Corps dress blues, both smiling, both alive, both unaware that in 3 years, the man would be dead and the woman would be hollow. Garrett picked it up, looked at it. His expression shifted slightly, some of the mockery fading, replaced by something almost like respect. Your husband? Yes. Marines? Yes. How'd he die? Sarah's jaw tightened. IED, Route Clearance Patrol. He was trying to save his team. She reached for the photo. Bryce grabbed it first, studied it, then, accidentally, spilled his water bottle on it. Oh man, sorry. His voice carried zero sincerity. Slippery hands today, I guess. The photo wasn't damaged. The case was waterproof. But something in Sarah's posture changed. A shift so subtle that most people would miss it. But Master Chief Blackwood saw it. Captain Rodriguez saw it. Her weight redistributed. Her spine straightened. The angle of her head adjusted by exactly 3 degrees. Her breathing pattern changed. Slower, deeper, more controlled. The woman who served coffee and cleaned tables was gone. Someone else stood in her place. Someone dangerous. Sarah took the photo from Bryce's hand, wiped it carefully with her sleeve, put it back in her bag. Then she looked at Garrett Blake. When she spoke, her voice was different. Flatter, colder. The voice of someone who'd given orders in combat and watched people die when those orders were followed. 1 magazine, M9, 50 yards. Master Chief Blackwood, who'd been about to intervene, froze. 50 yards with a pistol was extremely difficult. Standard qualification was 25 yards maximum. Even expert marksmen struggled to maintain accuracy at 50. At that range, you were fighting wind, fighting your own tremor, fighting physics itself. Garrett's eyes widened. You're serious? 1 magazine, Sarah repeated. Then you leave me alone. All of you. Forever. Garrett glanced at his buddies, excited now, smelling blood. Deal. But when you miss, you apologize to all of us for acting like you know things you don't. Sarah walked to the firing line. 20 people had gathered now. Word spread fast on military bases. Entertainment was rare. The cafeteria lady was about to embarrass herself, and everybody wanted to watch. Captain Rodriguez handed her a loaded M9. Ma'am, you don't have to do this. These kids are just being... It's fine. Sarah took the weapon. Her right hand wrapped around the grip. Index finger automatically extended along the frame, not touching the trigger. Her left hand came up in perfect support position. Thumbs forward, high grip, locked wrists. The stance was textbook. No, it was better than textbook. It was instinctive, natural, the way most people held a coffee cup. Master Chief Blackwood moved closer, watching intently. Sarah's breathing slowed, visible even from 30 feet away. In, out, finding the rhythm, the natural pause between heartbeats where the body stilled and the world narrowed to just the front sight and the target. She raised the weapon, barely seemed to aim, just looked at the target, indexed the front sight, and pressed. 2 shots, rapid succession, so fast they almost sounded like one report. Then 2 more, 2 more, 2 more, 2 more. 10 rounds, 8 seconds, controlled pairs. Every single hole in the center mass scoring zone. A grouping you could cover with a coffee mug. At 50 yards, with a pistol. The range went absolutely silent. Captain Rodriguez walked down range with binoculars, studied the target for a long moment, walked back. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. 10 for 10, center mass. That's... He looked at Sarah with completely different eyes. That's expert-level marksmanship, competition grade. That's Olympic-level shooting. Garrett's mouth hung open. That's, that's not possible. Nobody shoots that well without, without what? Sarah set the M9 down carefully, barrel pointed downrange, magazine released. Without training? She walked past him, past all of them. Holden reached out, grabbed her arm. Hey, you can't just walk away after. Sarah's response was automatic, pure muscle memory. Her wrist rotated 90 degrees. Her free hand came across and applied pressure to Holden's thumb joint, the weakest point in the human grip. He released immediately, face contorting in surprised pain. Don't grab people, she said calmly. It's rude. Then she left. The recruits stood frozen, every assumption they'd made about the quiet cafeteria lady shattering like glass. Master Chief Blackwood pulled out his phone, typed a message to Lieutenant Hart. Bump that background check to priority 1. Immediate. Something's very wrong here. Or very right, can't tell yet. But I need to know who this woman really is. He looked at the target downrange. 10 holes, perfect grouping, 50 yards. That wasn't luck. That wasn't YouTube. That wasn't a husband teaching his wife basics. That was thousands of hours of training, years of muscle memory, the kind of shooting that only came from one place: combat. Master Chief Victor Blackwood had been in special operations for 30 years. He'd seen the best shooters in the world. Delta, DEVGRUSAS. Spetsnaz defectors. What he'd just witnessed was at that level, and the woman who'd done it was serving coffee in his cafeteria. The sun set over Coronado, painting the Pacific in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the distance, recruits ran PT. Instructors shouted cadence. The machinery of military training ground forward. And Sarah Elizabeth Thorne walked to her car, knowing that everything had changed. She'd been exposed. The ghost was visible, and there was no going back. The evening air carried the salt smell of the Pacific as Sarah sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Her apartment was 40 minutes north in Oceanside. Anonymous, sparse. Everything she owned fit in 3 boxes, ready to move at a moment's notice if necessary. She'd done this before, twice. Both times when someone got too close to the truth. Both times she'd vanished in the night, found new work, rebuilt anonymity in a different city. But this time felt different. This time she was tired of running. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Miss Thorne, this is Sergeant Marcus Hayes. I work base maintenance. We haven't been formally introduced, but I was there today. At the range. Sarah's heart stopped. She knew that name. Knew it from 14 years ago, from a cold Afghan morning when she'd saved 30 lives and never told a soul. I need to ask you something, Hayes continued, voice tight with emotion. And I need you to be honest with me. Were you in Helmand Province in December of 2010? Sarah's fingers went white on the steering wheel. Because my convoy was ambushed outside FOB Delhi on December 15th. 6 vehicles, 30 Marines pinned down. We were taking fire from 3 elevated positions. We called for air support, but nothing was available. We thought we were dead. Sarah remembered. Cold morning, wind from the east at 14 miles per hour, temperature 38 degrees. She'd been on overwatch 2,000 meters out, unauthorized position, watching the valley because something felt wrong. And then someone started shooting, Hayes said, voice cracking. Someone we couldn't see. One by one, the hostile positions went silent. 7 shots, 7 kills. We never found out who saved us. But the lieutenant told me later he'd heard rumors. Call sign, Phantom, Marine Scout Sniper, classified unit. Silence on the line. Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I've been looking at a photo from that day for 14 years, Hayes continued. Zoomed in on the ridge where we thought the shots came from. There's someone in the frame, barely visible. I've studied that person's eyes for a decade. He paused. Same eyes I saw today at that range. Sarah closed her eyes. Sergeant, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, ma'am, you do. I think you do. And I need you to know something. My daughter, she's 13 years old now, honor student, plays soccer, dreams about being a doctor. His voice broke. She exists because you saved my life that morning. So whatever you're hiding from, whatever reason you're serving coffee instead of wearing the uniform, you've got my loyalty, forever. No questions asked. The line went dead. Sarah sat in the darkness of her car for 3 full minutes before starting the engine. In the rearview mirror, her eyes looked haunted, hollow. The eyes of someone who'd seen too much and survived too long. She drove home through the gathering darkness, knowing that tomorrow would bring a reckoning she couldn't avoid. The next morning began with rumors. Someone had looked her up online overnight, found nothing, no social media presence, no digital footprint beyond basic public records. In an era where everyone existed digitally, Sarah Thorne was a ghost. The word spread through the SEAL training center like wildfire. Who was the cafeteria lady? Where had she learned to shoot like that? Why was her personnel file flagged with security restrictions? Sarah arrived at 0630 as always, unlocked the cafeteria, started the coffee machines, began prep work for breakfast. The rhythm never changed. Precision, pattern, survival. At 0700, Master Chief Blackwood entered, alone. The cafeteria was empty, breakfast service not yet started. He poured himself coffee from the station Sarah had just finished setting up, stood there adding cream, saying nothing. Finally, he spoke. How long were you in? Sarah didn't look up from slicing fruit. I don't know what you mean, Master Chief. Yes, you do. His voice was quiet but firm. Your stance, your weapon handling, your situational awareness, that wasn't YouTube training. My husband was a good teacher. Your husband was Gunnery Sergeant David Rourke. I checked. Killed in action, Helmand Province, 2011. IED on route clearance. Excellent Marine, but he was infantry, not a sniper. Blackwood stepped closer. And you handle weapons like someone with thousands of hours of specialized training. Sarah's knife paused mid-slice. Lieutenant Hart ran your background, Blackwood continued. Your file has Department of Defense restrictions, security clearances that don't match your current position. Large gaps in your employment history between 2005 and 2013. He set down his coffee cup. A lot of military spouses have gaps in their work history, but most military spouses don't have files that require counterintelligence authorization to access. Sarah set down the knife, looked at him directly. I appreciate your curiosity, Master Chief, but I'm just here to do my job. I make coffee. I serve food. I clean tables. That's it. Is it? Yes. Then why did Captain Rodriguez tell me you diagnosed Merrick's shooting problems in 10 seconds? Problems it took our instructors 3 weeks to identify. Lucky guess. And the 50-yard pistol work? My husband was a good teacher. Stop lying to me. The words hung in the air. Not angry, just factual. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron. With respect, Master Chief, my personal history is my own business. I haven't done anything wrong. I show up on time. I do good work. If you have a problem with my performance, I don't. Blackwood picked up his cup. I have questions about your qualifications. Specifically, why someone with your obvious training is working in a cafeteria instead of teaching. Maybe I don't want to teach. Or maybe you're hiding. Sarah's face remained neutral, but her hands resting on the counter showed the slightest tension. Tendons standing out, muscles engaged. Blackwood noticed. Of course he noticed. I knew your husband, he said quietly. Fallujah, 2006. My SEAL team was providing security for a Marine operation. We got ambushed, pinned down in a kill zone, 7 hostile positions. We were about to be overrun. Then shots started coming from a rooftop, someone we never saw. 7 positions eliminated in maybe 4 minutes. Saved my entire team. Sarah's breathing stopped. Lieutenant David Rourke told me later about his wife. The sniper. Said she was the best he'd ever seen. Said she'd saved his life twice in combat. Blackwood's voice softened. Made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd look after you. Sarah's eyes were wet. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears fall. It took me 2 years to find you, Blackwood said. 2 years of searching. And now that I have, I'm going to keep that promise, whether you want me to or not. I want to be left alone. Too late for that. 60 people saw what you can do yesterday. The cat's out of the bag. He moved toward the exit, paused at the door. For what it's worth, Miss Thorne, your secret is safe with me. But secrets have a way of coming out, especially on military bases. And when yours does, you're going to need allies. He left. Sarah stood motionless for 15 seconds, then returned to slicing fruit. The knife moved with mechanical precision, each piece exactly the same size. Muscle memory, performing familiar tasks, while her mind calculated possibilities. Blackwood was smart, observant. He'd keep digging. Others would follow his lead. The questions would multiply. She'd been exposed before. Both times she'd moved, found new work, rebuilt anonymity. But she was 44 years old, tired. And part of her, a part she'd buried deep, wondered what would happen if people knew. The breakfast rush arrived. 200 hungry trainees flooded the cafeteria. Sarah moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency, invisible again. Just another face behind the serving line. Garrett's group came through around 0745. They took their food without comment, but she caught them whispering, glancing her direction, pulling up something on Holden's phone. They were researching, digging, coming up empty. That frustrated them more than the shooting demonstration had. At 0930, Lieutenant Rebecca Hart walked into the cafeteria. 32 years old, intelligence specialist, sharp eyes that cataloged everything, the way intelligence officers were trained to do. She approached the counter where Sarah was restocking napkin dispensers. Miss Thorne, can we talk? Sarah nodded. They stepped into the small office behind the kitchen. Empty, private. Hart didn't waste time. I'll be direct. Your background check came back with more red flags than a communist parade. Multiple security clearances, redacted service records, DOD classification markers that require presidential-level authorization to access. Sarah said nothing. I was married to a Marine, Hart continued. Sometimes spouses get clearances for... No, Hart cut herself off. This isn't spousal access. These clearances are personal, tied directly to you under a different name. She leaned forward. Who are you? Really? Someone who wants to be left alone. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Hart studied her for a long moment. Master Chief Blackwood thinks you're former intelligence, maybe CIA. I disagree. She crossed her arms. Your weapon handling, the way you move, the tactical awareness. I think you're former combat arms, probably special operations, but there's no record of women in special operations during the time periods we're looking at. Maybe you're looking at the wrong time periods, Sarah said carefully, or the wrong branches. Hart's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I'm going back to work now, Lieutenant. Unless you're placing me under arrest, we're done here. Sarah moved toward the door. Marine Scout Sniper, Hart said quietly. Sarah froze, hand on the doorknob. That's my theory, Hart continued. The timeline fits, the skills fit, and there were a handful of women who went through Scout Sniper School in the early 2000s as part of a pilot program, classified, most of it still buried under national security restrictions. Sarah turned slowly. Her face betrayed nothing, but her silence spoke volumes. I'm right, aren't I? Hart pressed. You were one of them. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. No. Sarah's voice was steel. I really don't, and neither do you. Those programs you're talking about, They don't exist, never did. And people who ask too many questions about things that don't exist tend to have very short careers in intelligence. The threat was clear, unmistakable. Hart held up both hands. I'm not trying to expose you. I'm trying to understand why someone with your background is hiding in a cafeteria. Maybe I'm not hiding. Maybe I'm exactly where I want to be. Why would you want to be here? Sarah looked out the small window at the recruits running PT in the distance. Young, strong, unbroken. That's my business, Lieutenant. She left the office, returned to work. But the net was closing. Too many people asking questions. Too many pieces falling into place. It was only a matter of time. That afternoon, the situation escalated. Garrett, Holden, and Bryce had been searching for hours, trying to find something, anything, about Sarah Thorne online, coming up empty. That made them more determined, more aggressive. At 1400 hours, they cornered her near the supply room. We know you're hiding something, Garrett said, blocking her path. Nobody shoots like that without serious training. Nobody knows weapons like you do without background. I told you, my husband. Your husband was infantry, Holden interrupted. We looked him up. David Rourke. Good Marine, but he wasn't special operations. Wasn't a sniper. So where did you really learn? Sarah set down the box she was carrying. Move, please. Answer the question first. I don't owe you anything, Bryce laughed. Come on, you made us look stupid yesterday. Least you can do is tell us who you really are. Sarah's voice dropped lower, colder. I'm someone who wants to do my job in peace. Now move. Not good enough. Garrett stepped closer, invading her space, trying to intimidate. See, we've got a bet going. Holden thinks you're former FBI. Bryce thinks maybe military police. I think you're just a gun nut who got lucky. Believe whatever you want. Holden's voice carried an edge. Or maybe you're nothing. Maybe yesterday was dumb luck and you're in over your head right now. He was baiting her, trying to provoke a reaction. Sarah picked up her box, walked around them, didn't engage. But as she passed, Bryce stuck out his foot. The trip was obvious, deliberate. Sarah saw it coming from a mile away. Could have avoided it easily, but that would reveal training. So she stumbled, dropped the box, caught herself on the wall. Supplies scattered across the floor. The three recruits laughed. Careful there, ma'am, Garrett said mockingly. Wouldn't want you to get hurt. 20 feet away, Gunnery Sergeant Raymond McKenna watched from the maintenance office doorway. 78 years old, retired Marine, base janitor, weathered face like old leather, eyes sharp as broken glass. He'd been watching Sarah for weeks now. Something about her was familiar. He couldn't place it until this moment. The way she'd moved to recover from the trip, the automatic assessment of her surroundings, the controlled breathing, the way her eyes tracked all three threats without moving her head. He'd seen that before. Korean War, Chosin Reservoir, winter of 1952. Marines surrounded by Chinese forces in -30-degree hell. The way the snipers moved, patient, precise, deadly calm under pressure. Ray walked over, mop in hand. You boys got a problem with this lady? Garrett turned, annoyed. Mind your business, old man. Ray didn't flinch. I'm making it my business, son. Your grandfather and I served together. Captain James Blake, Korea. Good man, fought at Incheon Landing. He leaned on his mop. He'd be ashamed watching you act like this. Garrett went pale. How do you know I know a lot of things. Now apologize to the lady and get out of here. They left, but the tension had crossed a line. Sarah knelt, began picking up supplies. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. Ray knelt beside her, helping. You carry yourself like my platoon sergeant at Chosin. Man saved my life twice in combat. He spoke quietly. You were a Marine, weren't you? Not a spouse. You. Sarah looked at him. 78 years old, Korean War veteran, Purple Heart, Silver Star. A man who'd earned the right to ask questions. I don't know what you mean, Gunny. Ray smiled slightly. Yeah, you do. But it's okay. I won't tell nobody. Just wanted you to know, whatever you're hiding from, you got at least one person here who respects it. Old Jarhead to young Jarhead. He stood, walked away, leaving Sarah kneeling on the floor with scattered supplies and too many emotions. At 1600 hours, Sarah's phone rang. Master Chief Blackwood. My office, now. We need to talk. His office was small, functional, maps on the walls, photos from deployments, awards and commendations he probably never looked at. Blackwood sat behind his desk. Sarah stood. Sit, he said. She sat. I'm going to tell you what I think happened, Blackwood began. And you can confirm or deny. But either way, I need the truth. These recruits deserve better than the ego-driven garbage they're learning from each other. Master Chief, let me finish. He held up a hand. I think you were part of a classified Marine Scout sniper program in the mid-2000s. I think you deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. I think you racked up one of the highest confirmed kill counts in modern military history. I think you retired or were forced out when the program was shut down. And I think you've been hiding ever since because you couldn't deal with what you'd done. Every word was accurate, painfully accurate. That's quite a theory, Sarah said. It's not a theory, it's the truth. Can you prove it? No, your records are buried deeper than nuclear launch codes. But I don't need proof. I just need you to stop lying to yourself. He leaned forward. If you are who I think you are, then you teach. You share what you know. You make sure the next generation doesn't repeat the mistakes of the past. I can't. Why not? Because every time I pick up a rifle, I see their faces. All 287 of them. Every kill I made to save lives. Every decision that haunted me afterward. Every soul I'm responsible for. The words came out raw, unfiltered, years of repression breaking open like a dam. Blackwood's expression softened. I've killed people too, not as many, but enough to know the weight, enough to know you don't ever really let it go. Then you understand why I can't teach others to carry that same weight. No, I understand why you must. He stood, walked to the window. Those 287 kills, they saved how many lives? Hundreds? Thousands? The skills you have, the knowledge you carry, it's not a burden to hide, it's a gift to share. That's easy for you to say. It's true whether it's easy or not. He turned back to face her. Those kids out there, Garrett, Holden, Bryce, they think combat is glory. They think killing is heroic. They don't understand the cost. You can teach them. Before they ever have to pull a trigger in anger, you can make them understand. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then slowly she spoke. If I agree to this, if I come out of hiding, I need guarantees. My identity stays classified. My unit stays classified. No media, no publicity, just training. Done. And Garrett's group apologizes, publicly, for how they've treated me. Consider it done. And I want final say on curriculum. If I'm teaching my way. No military politics, no shortcuts, real training or nothing. Absolutely. Sarah took a deep breath, let it out slowly, made the decision she'd been avoiding for 12 years. Okay, but we do this my way. And the first lesson is respect. These recruits need to learn that expertise doesn't always look like they expect. Agreed. When do you want to start? Tomorrow, noon, range 4. But first, Sarah stood. I want to demonstrate something at distance. Set up targets at 1,000 meters. Full class. Let them see what they're really dealing with. Blackwood smiled. You want to make a statement. I want to make them understand. Before the tattoo, before the revelation, I want them to see the skill first. Then they can know the history. Tomorrow morning then, 0900, long-range demonstration, then noon for the full reveal. Agreed. They left the office together, walked back into the cafeteria where conversations stopped. Everyone watched. Blackwood's voice carried across the space. Listen up. Tomorrow morning, 0900, Range 4, special long-range demonstration. Then noon, mandatory attendance for all training personnel. We're having a very special guest instructor. Garrett raised his hand. Who's the instructor, Master Chief? Blackwood looked at Sarah. She nodded slightly. You'll find out tomorrow. But I promise you this, it's a lesson you'll never forget. The sun set over Coronado, painting the Pacific in shades of purple and gold. Sarah drove home, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. The ghost would become visible. The phantom would step into the light. And there was no going back now. In her apartment that night, she pulled out a locked case from her closet. Inside, folded carefully, was desert camouflage, her old uniform. The fabric felt rough under her fingers. Real. Solid. On the sleeve, barely visible, a small patch. Scout Sniper logo. Crosshairs over skull. She hadn't worn this in 12 years. Hadn't allowed herself to even look at it. Tomorrow she would put it back on. Not the uniform, that was gone forever, but the identity, the truth. Sarah Elizabeth Thorne. Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, Scout Sniper. 287 confirmed kills, 4 combat deployments, Silver Star, Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, Phantom. She folded the uniform carefully, put it back in the case. Tomorrow she would teach. Tomorrow she would stop hiding. But tonight she allowed herself one moment of grief. For the woman she'd been. For the innocence she'd lost. For the 287 people whose death she carried like stones in her chest. Tomorrow she would transform that weight into wisdom. Tomorrow the phantom would rise. The morning came cold and clear. Sarah arrived at Range 4 at 0830, 30 minutes before the scheduled demonstration. The range was already filling with people. Word had spread through the base like wildfire. 40 personnel now, maybe more. Instructors, recruits, support staff, even some officers who normally avoided training areas. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Master Chief Blackwood stood beside a table covered with weapons. Barrett M82A 150 caliber sniper rifle, M40A5 bolt-action precision rifle, M4 carbine, M9 Beretta pistol. Every major weapon system used by military marksmen laid out like surgical instruments. At exactly 0900, Blackwood called the formation to attention. Yesterday, Miss Thorne demonstrated expert pistol marksmanship at 50 yards. Today, before we proceed with this afternoon's main instruction, we're going to see if that skill translates to long-range precision shooting. He gestured to the Barrett M82A1 on the table. This weapon is typically employed at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. Standard qualification is 600 meters. Today's demonstration will be at 1,000 meters. Cold bore, first shot. He looked at Sarah. Whenever you're ready, ma'am. Sarah approached the firing line. The recruits were watching now. Garrett, Holden, Bryce in front. All of them expecting her to fail. Expecting the cafeteria lady to embarrass herself. She picked up the Barrett. 57 pounds felt like coming home. Settled into position. Checked wind indicators downrange. Temperature, humidity. Ran calculations automatically. The math that happened faster than thought after 16 years of practice. The rifle nestled into her shoulder. Breathing slowed. World narrowed to just the scope, the target, the wind. Press. The Barrett's report echoed across the range like thunder. The recoil punched her shoulder. Familiar, almost comforting. 1 second of flight time. Then, the distinctive ring of steel on steel at 1,000 meters, center mass. Captain Rodriguez walked to the observation tower with binoculars, studied the target. When he returned, his face was pale. Perfect hit. Dead center at 1,000 meters. First shot. Cold bore. He looked at Sarah with something approaching awe. Ma'am, that's not just expert level. That's world-class precision. That's the kind of shooting that wins Olympic medals or saves lives in combat. Garrett Blake's mouth fell open. Holden Merrick stood frozen, phone halfway out of his pocket. Bryce Caldwell's hands shook. Sarah set down the Barrett carefully. "May I go prepare for the afternoon session, Master Chief?" Blackwood smiled slightly. "Yes, Gunny. See you at noon." The title slipped out. Deliberate. A hint of what was coming. Sarah walked away through the stunned crowd, leaving 40 people trying to process what they just witnessed. 3 hours later, the formation had doubled in size. Sarah arrived at Range 4 at 11:30. 60 personnel now, maybe more. The word had spread beyond the training center. This was becoming an event. Ray McKenna stood in the back of the formation, arms crossed. The old Korean War veteran had positioned himself deliberately where he could see everything. When Sarah made eye contact with him, he nodded once. Support, solidarity, old jarhead to young jarhead. Garrett's group clustered together near the front, whispering among themselves. Holden kept glancing at his phone, probably still searching for information about her. Still coming up empty. Bryce looked nervous now, perhaps sensing that something significant was about to happen. At exactly noon, Master Chief Blackwood called the formation to attention. "Today you're going to learn from someone with combat experience most of you will never approach. Someone who's been in situations you hope you never face. Someone who's made the kind of decisions that separate warriors from weekend shooters." He gestured towards Sarah. "Your instructor is Miss Sarah Thorne, and for the next several hours you will show her the respect she's earned through service most of you can't imagine." Sarah stepped forward. She'd changed from her cafeteria uniform into plain black tactical pants and a gray long-sleeve shirt. Nothing special, nothing that would draw attention. Except for what was about to happen. Garrett's group exchanged confused looks. The cafeteria lady? What could she possibly teach them that they didn't already know? Sarah looked at the assembled formation, saw the skepticism, the doubt, the arrogance. Good. That would make the lesson more effective. "My name is Sarah," she began. Her voice carried across the range, command presence bleeding through despite her attempt to sound casual. "Some of you know me as the cafeteria lady. You've mocked me, dismissed me, treated me as invisible. That's fine. You're about to learn why that was a mistake." She picked up the Barrett .50 caliber, 57 pounds with scope and loaded magazine. The rifle dwarfed her frame, but her hands knew exactly where to go. Muscle memory from thousands of hours. This weapon system has an effective range of 1,800 meters. In the right hands, it can engage targets at over 2,000 meters. She paused. "I've personally made shots at 2,200 meters under combat conditions. At night, with hostile fire incoming." Dead silence across the range. Sarah set down the Barrett, picked up the M40. This rifle is the standard Marine Corps sniper weapon. Effective range 1,000 meters. I've carried this rifle through 4 combat deployments, used it to engage 287 targets. Her voice never wavered. 287 confirmed kills. Everyone necessary. Everyone remembered. Garrett Blake's face went white as bone. Holden Merrick's mouth fell open. Bryce Caldwell took an involuntary step backward. "And this," Sarah held up the M9 Beretta, "is what you'll qualify with next week. Most of you will barely pass. Some will fail. 2 days ago, I put 10 rounds center mass at 50 yards. That's not showing off. That's the minimum standard for someone who's actually had to use this weapon to save lives." She set down the pistol, looked directly at Garrett's group. "You 5 have spent 2 days trying to figure out who I am, mocking me, testing me, trying to prove I'm nothing special. So let me save you the trouble." Sarah pulled off her gray long-sleeve shirt. Underneath, she wore a black tank top, and on her left shoulder, visible to everyone, was a tattoo. Black and gray ink. Professional work, detail, and unmistakable. Scout Sniper, MOS 0317, arched across the top. 287 in large numbers at the center. The Scout Sniper logo, crosshairs with skull, rendered in perfect detail. Fallujah, Helmand, at the bottom. 4 hash marks on the side, one for each combat tour. And in small letters beneath everything, Semper Fi for David. The crowd erupted. Not in noise, in silence. 60 people drawing breath at exactly the same moment. The sound of assumptions shattering, of prejudices crumbling, of reality asserting itself against comfortable lies. Master Chief Blackwood came to attention, rendered a full military salute, held it. Commander Elizabeth Kane, who'd been watching from the range booth, stood, saluted. Captain Rodriguez, Lieutenant Hart, Sergeant Hayes. One by one, every military member present came to attention, saluted, showed the respect that 287 confirmed kills and 4 combat tours demanded. Sarah stood in the center of it all, exposed, vulnerable. Every secret laid bare under the California sun. And for the first time in 12 years, she felt the weight begin to lift. Not disappear, never disappear, but shift, redistribute, become something she could carry with purpose instead of shame. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then Petty Officer Rodriguez whispered, voice carrying in the stillness, "Holy God, that's Phantom. That's actually Phantom." The name rippled through the crowd like electricity. Phantom, the legendary Marine sniper whose exploits had become whispered stories in military circles. 287 confirmed kills, 4 combat tours, missions so classified they'd been erased from official records. And she'd been serving them coffee for 2 years. Garrett Blake's legs gave out. He caught himself on Holden's shoulder, face drained of color. No, that's not possible. Women weren't even allowed in combat roles back then. Weren't what? Sarah's voice cut through his stammering. Weren't allowed? Weren't capable? Weren't worthy? She stepped toward him. I was doing my job while you were in high school, Blake. I was saving lives while you were deciding which college to attend. I was watching my husband die while you were playing video games and dreaming about being a hero. Holden dropped into parade rest automatically, military bearing kicking in despite his shock. His hands shook. These were the hands that had grabbed her arm yesterday, that had touched someone with a combat record he couldn't comprehend. Bryce's phone slipped from his fingers, clattered on the ground. The screen showed search results. Marine Scout Sniper 287 kills Phantom. Article after article, forum posts, military history sites, all discussing the legendary sniper whose identity had never been confirmed. Until now. Master Chief Blackwood lowered his salute. Gunnery Sergeant Thorne, it's an honor to have you on this base, truly. I'm retired, Master Chief, just Sarah. Retired or not, you've earned that title and more. He turned to the formation. I wish you'd told us sooner. I had my reasons. From the back of the formation, Ray McKenna pushed through the crowd, phone in hand, showing an old photograph. May I, Gunny? Sarah nodded. Ray held up his device. The photo showed Helmand Province, December 2010, zoomed in on a barely visible figure on a ridgeline. I knew it was you. 14 years I've been looking at this photo, wondering who saved our lives that day. His voice cracked. My daughter exists because of you. She's 13 now, honor student, wants to be a doctor. He saluted her, hands shaking. Thank you doesn't cover it, but thank you. Sarah's eyes were wet. She blinked rapidly. You didn't need to know, Sergeant. Yes, we did, because every man in that convoy went home to their families. My daughter met her father. My wife didn't become a widow. He lowered his salute. That matters, Gunny. That matters more than anything. Around them, phones emerged. 60 people recording, documenting. This moment would be all over social media within hours. The mystery solved. The legend confirmed. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. Goodbye, anonymity. Hello, unwanted fame. Lieutenant Hart stepped forward with a tablet. I finally got partial access to your file, Gunny. What I can read is extensive. She began reading. Gunnery Sergeant Sarah Elizabeth Thorne, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, MOS 0317, 4 combat deployments, Iraq, Fallujah, 2005 through 2007, Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2009 through 2013. Her voice grew stronger. 287 confirmed kills. Silver Star for actions in Fallujah, November 2006. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. Purple Heart, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation. Each credential landed like a hammer blow. The recruits who'd mocked her for 2 days now looked physically ill. Your longest recorded shot was 2,200 meters. Target eliminated during Operation Steel Curtain. 8 American lives saved. You operated alone for 72 hours behind enemy lines to make that shot. Hart looked up. Why? Why disappear so completely after service like that? Sarah looked at the assembled faces. Young, eager, hungry for glory. They didn't understand. This was why she'd hidden. Because they saw medals and kills and thought it was heroic. They didn't see the cost. Because every number on that record represents a person I killed, she said quietly. 287 people who woke up that morning not knowing it was their last day. 287 families who got news that destroyed their worlds. I did it to save American lives. I'd do it again. But that doesn't make it glorious. It makes it necessary. There's a difference. The weight in her words settled over the crowd like a physical presence. Master Chief Blackwood cleared his throat. Gunnery Sergeant, would you be willing to share your experience with these recruits? Not just the tactics, the reality. What it actually means to carry that burden. Sarah studied the faces before her, saw Garrett Blake's shame, Holden Merrick's newfound respect, Bryce Caldwell's dawning understanding. These kids needed to know before they ever picked up a rifle in anger, needed to understand what they were really signing up for. All right, she said, but first, Blake, Merrick, Caldwell, front and center. The 3 recruits stumbled forward, stood at attention, trembling slightly. Sarah approached them slowly, stopped 3 feet away, met each set of eyes in turn. You 3 have spent 2 days trying to humiliate me, mocking my work, questioning my capabilities, treating me as less than human because I was in a service role. Her voice remained calm, deadly calm. Do you understand why that was wrong? Yes, Gunnery Sergeant, Garrett managed. I'm not finished. Sarah stepped closer. You were wrong, not because I turned out to have a combat record. You were wrong because no human being deserves to be treated the way you treated me. Service is service. Whether I'm serving coffee or serving my country, that work has dignity. The moment you forget that, you fail as leaders. Holden swallowed hard. We understand, Gunny. Do you? Because I don't think you do. You think the lesson here is don't underestimate people. That's part of it. But the real lesson is simpler. She paused. Treat everyone with respect. Period. Not because they might secretly be special. Because they're human and they deserve it. Bryce's voice came out strangled. We're sorry, Gunnery Sergeant. Truly sorry. I believe you're sorry you were wrong. I'm not sure you're sorry for how you treated me. There's a difference. She looked at Master Chief Blackwood. But you'll have a chance to prove it. All 3 of you just volunteered to be my teaching assistants for the next 6 months. You'll help set up equipment, demonstrate incorrect technique, and generally make yourselves useful. Consider it penance. Yes, Gunnery Sergeant, in unison. Sarah turned to address the full formation. Everyone here needs to understand something. The skills I have, they came at a cost. 4 years of my life in combat zones. Watching friends die, making decisions that still wake me up at night. Every shot I took, I had to live with forever. She picked up the M40 rifle again. This weapon doesn't make you powerful. It makes you responsible. When you look through this scope and put crosshairs on another human being, you're not a hero, you're a tool. A necessary tool in protecting your teammates and your country. But never forget what it means. The crowd hung on every word. This wasn't the patriotic warrior narrative they'd expected. This was something rawer, truer. In Fallujah, November 2006, I was providing overwatch for a patrol. They walked into an ambush. 6 insurgents with RPGs and automatic weapons. My team was pinned down, 12 Marines including Lieutenant David Rourke, who would become my husband 2 months later. Sarah's voice remained steady, but her eyes showed the weight. I had clear shots on all 6 targets. I took those shots. 6 kills in 90 seconds. Saved 12 American lives, including the man I loved. Got the Silver Star for it. She paused. But you know what I remember most? Not the medal, not the thanks, not David proposing to me 2 weeks later. Her voice dropped lower. I remember one of those insurgents was holding a picture of his family. It fell out of his pocket after I shot him. Wife, 3 children. He was probably fighting for what he thought was right, defending his country against invaders. And I ended him. Because my job was to protect Americans, not to judge who was right. Garrett's face showed raw emotion now. This wasn't the glory story he'd expected. This was something darker, more honest. That's the reality, Sarah continued. You don't get to be a sniper and pretend you're just removing targets. You're ending lives, human lives. It's necessary. It saves more lives than it takes. But own what it is. If you can't handle that truth, don't pick up this rifle. Go be infantry. Go be support. But don't become a sniper thinking it's about skill and glory. It's about responsibility and weight. Commander Kane stepped forward. Gunnery Sergeant, I'd like to formally offer you a position as director of our Precision Marksmanship Program. Civilian GS-13 equivalent. Full benefits. You train the next generation of military marksmen, not just SEALs, all branches. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I'll need conditions. Name them. First, no publicity, no media, no ceremonies. I teach, then I go home. I'm not a recruitment poster. Agreed. Second, I teach the whole picture, not just shooting, the psychology, the ethics, the aftermath. These kids need to know what they're getting into. Absolutely. Third, I want Blake, Merrick, and Caldwell in my first class. If they can learn humility and respect, anyone can. Commander Kane glanced at the 3 recruits. They looked terrified. Done. When can you start? Tomorrow, 0700. But today, I want to demonstrate something for everyone here. Sarah gestured to the Barrett 50 caliber. Master Chief, set up multiple long-range targets. Let's show these recruits what expert-level marksmanship actually looks like. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah conducted a shooting demonstration that would be talked about for years. Targets at 600 meters, 900 meters, 1,200 meters, 1,500 meters. Each one engaged with precision that seemed impossible. Between shots, she explained the science. See those grass movements downrange? That tells you wind speed and direction. Heat shimmer, that's your mirage. Tells you if wind is consistent or variable. You need to see the environment, become part of it. She had Garrett spot for her while she engaged a target at 1,500 meters. Tell me what you see. Garrett's voice was uncertain. Target is, I think there's wind from the left. Don't think, observe. What are the grass patterns showing? Movement from southwest to northeast, maybe 8 miles per hour? Good, that's closer. But look at the mirage near the target. See how it's moving? Garrett squinted through the spotting scope. It's wavy, moving right. Exactly. That means wind at target distance is different from wind here. You need to account for both. This isn't just math. It's reading the battlefield. It's becoming one with the environment until you can feel the wind on targets you can't even see. Sarah made the shot. Center mass at 1,500 meters. The target plate rang clear in the afternoon air. Garrett's jaw dropped. How did you— 16 years of practice, Sarah said quietly, and I still miss sometimes. Perfection isn't the goal. Competence is. Consistency is. Understanding your limitations and working within them, that's what separates professionals from amateurs. By 1,600 hours, Sarah had covered more material than most instructors covered in a week. The recruits were exhausted, overwhelmed, but educated in ways they hadn't expected. As the formation dispersed, Lieutenant Hart approached Sarah hesitantly. "Gunnery Sergeant, I need to apologize. What I said earlier about questioning your background, I was speaking from ignorance. I'm sorry." Sarah studied her. "Why were you wrong, Lieutenant?" Hart thought carefully. "Because I made assumptions based on incomplete information and my own limited experience?" "Closer, but not quite there. I don't understand." "You were wrong because you judged an entire group based on your preconceptions. Gender, race, background, none of it matters if someone has the skills and dedication." Sarah's voice was firm, but not unkind. "The moment you start categorizing people instead of evaluating them individually, you fail as a leader. You fail as a human being." Hart nodded slowly. "I understand. Thank you for the lesson, Gunny. Show me you understand by changing how you lead. Words are easy. Action is what counts." Epilogue. Legacy. Over the next 3 months, Sarah's program transformed the base culture. She taught 4 classes per week, each one packed with recruits from different branches. Word spread throughout the military community. People requested transfers to Coronado just to learn from Phantom. Garrett Blake, Holden Merrick, and Bryce Caldwell became her most dedicated students. The 3 who'd mocked her most viciously now worked harder than anyone to prove they'd learned their lesson. They set up equipment before she arrived, stayed late to clean weapons, asked thoughtful questions about ethics and responsibility. One evening after a particularly grueling training session, Garrett approached Sarah alone. "Gunny, can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask, I might not answer." "How do you live with it? 287 kills. How do you wake up every morning and function?" Sarah set down the rifle she'd been cleaning. "Honestly, some days I don't. Some days the weight is too much. But then I remember the alternative. Every person I killed was actively trying to kill Americans. If I hadn't pulled those triggers, how many of our people would have died?" "But how do you know for sure? How do you know you made the right calls?" "I don't, not always. That's the burden. You make the best decision you can with the information you have. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but you don't get to freeze. Indecision kills more people than wrong decisions." She looked at him directly. "That's why training matters, why preparation matters. So when the moment comes, you act on instinct built from thousands of hours of practice. Not panic, not hesitation, trained response." Garrett was quiet for a moment. "I don't think I could do what you did." "Maybe not, but if you ever have to, you'll find strength you didn't know you had. And hopefully the training I'm giving you will make those decisions a little clearer, a little more certain." She paused. "Your father would be proud of the man you're becoming, Garrett. Not because you're tough or skilled, but because you're learning humility. That's harder than Hell Week. That's the real test." By the end of 3 months, Sarah's students showed remarkable improvement. More importantly, they showed maturity. They understood that marksmanship wasn't about ego or glory. It was about responsibility and service. Ray McKenna, the 78-year-old Korean War veteran, became Sarah's unofficial assistant. He'd show up at her classes, sit in the back, occasionally offer wisdom from his own combat experience. The connection between them, old Jarhead and young Jarhead, separated by decades but united by service, became one of the base's quiet legends. One afternoon, Ray pulled Sarah aside. "Gunny, I got something to tell you. Doctors say I got maybe 6 months. Cancer, pancreatic, inoperable. Sarah's world stopped. Ray, don't. I've had 78 good years, fought in Korea, served in Dominican Republic, raised 3 kids, buried a wife I loved for 50 years. I got no complaints. He smiled. But I got one regret. Never formally passed on what I learned in combat. Never trained the next generation properly. Until you. Ray, you've taught me so much about patience, about perspective, about staying true to yourself even when the world wants you to hide. He gripped her shoulder. You gave an old man purpose again, Sarah. Let me watch you teach. Let me see the legacy continue. That's all I want. For the next 4 months, Ray attended every class. Watched Sarah transform young recruits into thoughtful warriors. Watched Garrett become a leader. Watched Holden find discipline. Watched Bryce discover courage. And then one morning in early spring, Ray McKenna didn't show up for class. Sarah found out 2 hours later. He'd passed peacefully in his sleep. Purple Heart and Silver Star on his nightstand. Photo of his Marine platoon from Korea beside them. The funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery. Full military honors. Marines in dress blues. 21-gun salute. Taps echoing across the endless rows of white headstones. Sarah delivered the eulogy in her civilian clothes, voice steady despite the grief. Gunnery Sergeant Raymond McKenna served this country for 78 years. Not all in uniform, but all with honor. He taught me that age doesn't diminish a warrior. Experience amplifies it. That wisdom is the ultimate weapon. That service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It continues in how you treat others, how you share knowledge, how you lift up those who come after. She looked at the assembled Marines, at Garrett and Holden and Bryce standing at attention, at the old Korean War veterans who'd come to honor one of their own. Ray told me once that his only regret was never passing on what he'd learned. But he did. Every conversation, every word of wisdom, every moment of patience with an old ghost trying to remember how to be human. Her voice cracked slightly. He taught me that hiding from your past isn't peace. That true peace comes from transforming pain into purpose. From using what you've learned to make others better. She saluted the flag-draped coffin. Semper Fidelis, Gunny Ray. You did your job. Now we'll do ours. 2 weeks after Ray's funeral, Sarah sat in her office reviewing training schedules when her phone rang. Unknown number, but she recognized the area code, Washington, D.C. Gunnery Sergeant Thorne, this is Colonel David Webb, Joint Special Operations Command. We have a situation that requires your specific expertise. Sarah's stomach tightened. She'd known this call would come eventually. I'm retired, Colonel. I'm aware. This isn't a recall. It's a request. We have actionable intelligence on a high-value target. The individual responsible for the IED that killed your husband. The world stopped. Mahmoud al-Rashid, Taliban commander, still operating in Helmand province. Our intelligence indicates he's personally responsible for 43 American deaths since your husband's death in 2011. Webb paused. There's a window, one shot, 1,400 meters, night operation, challenging conditions. And intelligence suggests he has a counter-sniper, possibly the same one you wounded in 2012. Call sign Scorpion. Sarah's hands gripped the phone. When? Wheels up in 8 hours, but Gunnery Sergeant, this is off the books. Black operation. You'll be listed as Civilian Technical Consultant. If captured, we cannot acknowledge you. Sarah looked around her office. Photos of her students, training schedules, lesson plans, the life she'd built from the ashes of her old one. Then she saw the handwritten note on her desk from Garrett, left that morning. Gunny, thank you for teaching me what honor really means. Not bravado, not toughness, but serving something bigger than myself. You gave me something to live up to. I won't. Ray McKenna's words echoed in her memory. When we found the Chinese commander who ordered the attack that killed my friends at Chosin, 3 of us went after him. against orders, and I slept better every night after. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. This was about closing a wound that had been bleeding for 13 years. The plane descended through darkness toward Bagram Airfield. Sarah checked her gear one final time. Barrett M82A1. Rangefinder. Spotting scope. Cold. Final chapter. The last shot. 16 hours later, Sarah lay prone on a rocky outcrop 3 kilometers from Mahmoud al-Rashid's compound. The Afghan night was cold enough to see her breath, but her hands remained steady. They always did. Through her thermal scope, she watched the compound. 1,400 meters, the exact distance Webb had warned her about. Wind gusting 12 to 18 miles per hour, temperature dropping, conditions degrading by the minute. Her earpiece crackled. Phantom, this is Overwatch. Target confirmed in compound. Window closing in 30 minutes. Copy, Sarah whispered, standing by. She'd been in position for 6 hours, waiting, watching, the way she'd done 1,000 times before. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon. Ray McKenna had taught her that, well, reminded her. She'd always known it. Movement, 800 meters at her 10 o'clock. Another sniper. Had to be Scorpion. Sarah's pulse didn't change, 62 beats per minute. She shifted her aim slightly, tracking the distant figure through her scope. He was good, very good, moving in short bursts, using terrain, staying low. But she was better. The counter-sniper settled into position. She could see the glint of his scope now. He was hunting her. Probably had been for the last hour, systematically clearing positions. He just hadn't found her yet. Phantom, target moving to safe room in 20 minutes. If you're going to take the shot, negative, secondary threat, stand by. Sarah made a decision, Scorpion first. Otherwise, she'd be dead before she could engage the primary target. She calculated wind, distance, drop, Coriolis effect, all the mathematics that happen faster than conscious thought after 16 years of practice. Exhale, natural pause, press. The Barrett roared. Recoil punched her shoulder. Familiar, almost comforting. 1,300 meters downrange, Scorpion dropped. No movement, no return fire. Kill number 288. Sarah didn't pause to confirm. Swung the Barrett toward the compound. Al-Rashid was at a window, silhouetted against interior light. Amateur mistake, fatal mistake. 1,400 meters, wind gusting, temperature down to 32 degrees. Sarah saw David's face, heard his voice, felt his hand in hers one last time. For you, she whispered, for all of us you killed, for all the families you destroyed. Exhale, pause, press. The round flew true across 1,400 meters of Afghan night, through window glass, through the space where a man stood who'd killed 43 Americans, who'd murdered her husband. Mahmoud al-Rashid collapsed. Kill number 289. Target down, Sarah said into her radio. Phantom moving to extraction. She didn't wait for confirmation. Didn't need it. After 289 kills, you knew when the shot was good. The extraction took 3 hours. By dawn, she was on a C-17 heading east. By the next evening, she was in Coronado. Master Chief Blackwood met her at the base gate, took one look at her face and nodded. It's done? It's done. Good. He handed her a cup of coffee, black, the way she liked it. Your students have been asking about you. Garrett's been running the morning classes. Kid's actually pretty good. Sarah smiled slightly. First real smile in 2 weeks. He's learning. They all are. Because of you. Blackwood paused. You coming back? Or was this? I'm coming back, Sarah said. I have unfinished business here, the kind that matters. 3 days later, Sarah stood before her class. Garrett, Holden, Bryce in the front row. 20 other students behind them. All watching, all listening. 2 weeks ago, I told you about the weight of 287 kills. she began. That number is now 289. I just returned from Afghanistan, from a mission I'd been avoiding for 13 years. She set down her coffee, looked at each of them. I killed the man who murdered my husband and his counter-sniper. 2 shots, 2 kills, justice served. Her voice was steady, clear. And you know what I learned? Silence. That revenge doesn't heal wounds, it just closes them. The real healing, the real purpose, comes from this, from teaching you, from making sure the next generation understands not just how to kill, but when not to kill, when to show restraint, when to walk away. Garrett raised his hand. Did it bring you peace, Gunny, taking those shots? Sarah considered the question. No, but it brought me closure. There's a difference. Peace comes from what I do here, from watching you grow, from knowing that Ray McKenna's legacy continues through all of us. She picked up her rifle. Now, today we discuss urban hide construction. Pay attention. This knowledge will save your life someday. As she taught, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 14 years. Not peace, not quite, but purpose. And that was enough. 6 months later, Garrett Blake graduated top of his class, deployed to Syria as a scout sniper. His first long-range save came at 900 meters. He thought of Sarah's lessons with every shot. Holden Merrick became an instructor at Quantico, teaching the next generation the way Sarah had taught him. Patient, thorough, ethical. Bryce Caldwell found his calling in combat medicine, saving lives instead of taking them, using his steady hands for healing instead of shooting. And Sarah Elizabeth Thorne continued to teach, day after day, week after week, transforming pain into purpose, transforming warriors into something better, protectors with wisdom. One evening, as the sun set over Coronado, she stood at Ray McKenna's memorial bench overlooking the Pacific. A simple plaque, Gunny Ray McKenna, USMC, Korea, 1952. Teacher, friend, Marine. She saluted the sunset. Mission complete, Gunny Ray. The legacy continues. The ocean wind carried the sound of recruits training in the distance. Young voices, strong voices. The next generation learning from the past. Sarah turned and walked back toward the base. Phantom wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a teacher. And that was the most important mission of all. Behind her, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The same sky that covered Helmand Province. The same sky that had witnessed 289 kills made by steady hands and a heavy heart. But also the same sky that now watched her build something better, something that lasted. Not monuments, not medals, not fame, but warriors who understood the weight, who respected the cost, who protected rather than destroyed. That was Sarah's legacy. That was Phantom's gift to the world. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, to the mission, to the fallen, to the future.